Welcome to the I Write videocast podcast show. Today is Hat Friday, but I'm the only one wearing a hat.
I couldn't reach my hat today.
I'm going with Norris' excuse. I couldn't reach mine either.
There you go. So, if you can tell that Jimmy Hutton here and Norris Stewart are joining me. My name's Stuart Lockhead. Today we have a very quick, short report on the presser. Jean Freeman was hosting it today with the Chief Nursing Officer. That was a very short affair. We have, of course, the SNP Conference coming up this weekend. It's impossible to avoid talking about it, to be honest, because everybody else will be, one way or another. And there is even a fringe conference, which is easy enough, I suppose, if it's virtual. Right, I better tell you about the presser. There's not a lot to tell you guys. Neither of my co-hosts,
No, I watched it.
Oh, you watched it? Oh, well, you can report on it then, Norrie.
Well, it was much of a muchness, really. Questions about Christmas. I think the final question was from a producer because the journalist got stuck in traffic, and it was, I know a woman whose son had to self-isolate and she didn't get her 500 quid.
It's Broadcasting Scotland.
Well, right, what was her circumstances?
I don't know.
I know a millionaire who's a single parent whose son had to self-isolate and she didn't get her 500 quid. I know a woman who's on benefits whose son had to self-isolate and she didn't get her 500 quid. I mean, without the details around the thing, it's not really relevant, is it?
Right.
Not really.
To ask any politician about an individual case is just a waste of a question. It's a waste of a question. Them being there, isn't it?
Well, he wasn't a journalist. I think he was the techie from the studio. He said.
I think so. Yeah.
It's a bit like asking Cad from the Leith FM days to become a journalist. Mind you, he could manage that, couldn't he? The usual suspect, Mark McLaughlin from the Times. He's top of the list every day now to ask a stupid question. What was his stupid question, Norrie? Talking about Jason Leach apparently have been on.
Jason Leach this morning on the radio said, if you're an old person and you're worried about the risk from COVID at Christmas, have your champagne with your family in the garden. That was twisted to, but the Scottish Government recommends that you keep warm in the winter if you're old and vulnerable. Like, yeah. And his actual question was, how do you reconcile telling old vulnerable people to go out for their champagne to keep them safe from COVID with telling old people to stay indoors and keep warm?
He's after it.
It's ludicrous, eh? Ludicrous. That's the level that they've stooped to now. If they're old and vulnerable, they're not going to. But if they're old and vulnerable, they're not going to be hitting the bevy anyway, are they?
No, I mean it's like asking her, if you don't believe in nuclear weapons, why do you let them reside in Scotland?
I thought he was going to ask about. Well, if drinking alcohol is really bad for you, why are you recommending old people drink champagne?
The question could have been exactly that.
Aye.
It could have been exactly.
That man, McLaughlin, is after a job with the Sun or the Mail.
Well,
probably better paid.
If he sticks with the Times, he won't go far wrong because they're getting very tabloid. If that's the standard of their questioning.
It's not just him.
Well, I mean, their headlines are getting very tabloid.
I suppose the other
very often got nothing to do with the content of the article.
We live in a tabloid world these days, mate. You only have to switch on your telly and inadvertently slide onto Channel 5 to realise that. Well,
another classic was the very first question from our man in the borders.
The man on the border.
People are getting stopped by the police on their way to work crossing the Scotland-England border.
Hooray!
Are you going to tell the police to stop stopping people on the border? Well, if they've got every good, this is Jean Freeman, if they've got every good reason to cross the border for work or caring duties or whatever, they can tell the police that and the police will let them go. It's like, I'm a borderer, so you can't stop me for anything.
I know. They're obsessed with the border. They are obsessed with the border. Nothing else happens down there but the border.
Well, they're obsessed with the fact that Scotland and England are two different countries, and therefore a border exists. I mean, oh God.
Saves them being obsessed with their sisters. Come on, just leave them in peace.
Hey, I didn't have a sister. I'm a border, proper border.
No, you're not. You're
Sheep-
an Arab.
sheep
So
You're
you
a-
were interested, you were bothered in the sheep rather than your sister.
Sheep
then.
were fine for me.
You're an Arab.
Well, I'm an Arab borderer then.
All right.
Mhm.
But what was the other question? Of course, was apparently we've heard that they might extend the school holidays after New Year.
This is another one of these ones, you know, like a competent government will discuss all likelihoods and try
Yeah.
to plan for them. So somebody said to some reporter, oh, they were discussing extending the holidays. So it's now an issue. It would
Do you
be an
think that
issue
was-
if they hadn't been discussing every possibility.
Do you think that was a roundabout way of getting Gene Freeman to use the word be, or sorry, the letter B and the word plan in the same sentence, just so they could write about it the more?
Well, I mean, it's something that actually annoys me when the Westminster government deems to be questioned by the press as well. They ask the stupidest questions. They really do.
Yeah, but it's also notable that when the Westminster government are considering options, they're wargaming. You know what I mean? They're planning.
Yeah.
It's good forethought. When people in Edinburgh do it, it's just mischievous, and frankly, it deserves to be questioned at every turn.
Just looking for a different path from the UK government.
I mean, these journalists continue to be the story day after day when we watch these briefings. They make themselves a story, and they shouldn't be doing that. They're failing when they do so.
The other huge problem for me is they don't have to ask these questions. The information is online. They just have to know how to use a computer. But their function is not to get information. Their function is to generate headlines.
Yeah, that's basically what's been shown quite clearly, that any respect I had for journalism is down the tubes, mate.
Can any of us think of a question that was asked where the answer was, oh, actually, that isn't fair. It has happened.
I know. I thought there was. The Sun Boy was quite cunning. Mind you, he's a whole story all on his own. Dan Devers, and he had a question. He wanted to know what was going to happen when Jean Freeman left her job in May, and if the pandemic was still going on. Because
obviously Jean Freeman doesn't have a deputy, or doesn't have 1,000 civil servants backing her up. So every time there's a possibility that any minister at head of a department is going to leave, the whole thing's going to tumble. It's going to crash. It's going to sink in the ocean. You should try asking some of the arseholes down in the cabinet in Westminster who's covering them when they get caught out.
Did the Foreign and Commonwealth Office fall apart when Boris walked out to make a point before he became leader?
Well,
no, it didn't.
I mean, that's a level of ignorance about how governments work beyond belief. That's why civil services exist, so that all the information that needs to be passed on gets passed on. That's a major function of the civil service.
So he had two questions, the Sun Boy, and first question was about the Louisa Jordan Hospital. That was the title of his question, but it was about the spread of hospital-acquired infections. I can see the steam coming out your ears already, Norrie, just hold on. So Jean Freeman gave a very long answer, then went over to the chief nursing officer, who gave another very long answer. 10 minutes later, they tried to move on. 10 minutes, they tried to move on to another journalist, and this Sun journalist pipes up, "You haven't answered my first question." God, stuff the guy.
Well, what I like about this is the Louisa Jordan, which exists to cope with possible overspill from the hospitals if they get overrun, has now got to be used for something else because it's lying empty, because it shouldn't be an overspill hospital in case the pandemic runs out of control. It should be used for clipping toenails or something.
It has been used.
Well, it's being used in a fashion that allows it to immediately kick in for overspill.
Yeah.
No,
I'm glad I never watched it.
No, that's
But
it.
basically every question was predicated on the fact that the person asking it had to be a bit stupid.
Yeah, you think though they might have watched Philippa Whitford yesterday and had a giggle to themselves, as we did, at the shite running down the legs of the health secretary when he realised he was having to answer questions from an expert. I've never seen the look on Matt Hancock's face quite. It was like a Wayne that had been caught with his hand in the penny jar, because he knew that she had him tied in knots. You think one of them might aspire to that, to actually ask something that Gene Freeman couldn't answer, or to actually be in control of the facts to the point where you actually elicit a real answer rather than her just slapping you down.
The nearest that you get to that is the question about one bit of government advice appears to contradict another bit of government advice. That's as near as they can get to it.
But I mean, they're not asking questions that people ask me in the taxi. How's Edinburgh in tier 3 when the numbers are nowhere near where they should be? Not one of them's asked that question. It's almost like there's a conspiracy of silence, not to get to the truth here, not to get to the point that Nicola doesn't want people travelling.
I know what the truth is, Jimmy.
They don't want me to go in the piss.
No. The truth is, unfortunately, that certain parts of the Lothian health region are creaking a bit at the seams and they're worried about the hospitals being overrun, i.e. it's all Livingston's fault.
Aye, St John's, they're not willing to admit that St John's is a shithole that they should never have built, and they should actually just bang it down now and build something better out there.
Possibly. Stuart, move us on.
Yes, please.
Well, we can't avoid this weekend is the SNP conference. Normally it would be probably boring, third on the list, but given the circumstances, there's no avoiding it really, is there? Who do you want to start with? Joanna Cherry? Peter A. Bell?
Well,
Can I start with Nicola and her wee carrot dangling last night?
I think you need to go there.
Gone on the news programmes and telling us that we will get an independence referendum early in the next parliament.
Not quite what she said.
No, she used the word should.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not. There wasn't a full commitment, shall we say?
It's exactly. It was, as Peter Bell put it, it's exactly the wording that she needed to do, so that the unionist press would then throw their hands up in angst and tell everyone that we are going to have a referendum next year. She knew exactly what she was doing. The only unfortunate thing for her is that Joanna Cherry knew exactly what Nicola was going to do and penned an article in the National this morning that made Nicola look like an absolute clown.
Well, she's pulled it off before, Nicola, but I think that particular well is running dry.
Aye, our grand old Duke of York Act is really getting tired now.
Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I'm kind of in limbo on this one. I want to see what happens, and I don't know really what to say about it because it is up to the membership. If the membership get this right, it's actually going to be a huge success for the SNP. Mm-hmm. If the SNP hierarchy manage to stymie the membership, it's going to look really, really, really bad. That's kind of where I am at the moment.
I think
Are you guys attending?
32 quid. That's what all you got to pay, and you can sit and get bored for 3 days, or is it 2.5?
I'm loath to, because there's nothing going to come up from the virtual floor that isn't just boilerplate. There is no big issue being allowed to be debated.
I think it'll all be on social media, everything that's interesting.
I think.
Well, I don't think there'll be anything interesting.
I think there's a lot of people who will. You'll not miss anything if you sit and watch a wee bit of Twitter, dip in and out of Twitter over the weekend, because anything that does happen, and let's be honest, the main thing that we're looking at is the elections to the NEC. But anything that happens will be all over Twitter the minute it's happened.
Well, look, what about, Iain Lawson seems to give a wee bit of optimism. He says, following the selection contest that saw only 2 woke candidates being selected from 32 contests.
Now, is this for the NEC?
No, that was for the candidacy in next year's elections.
May elections. Despite many being handed significant advantages by the vetting and selection procedures, the SNP name is now being trashed in woke circles for failing to select their anointed. It is now being suggested if the woke suffer further serious reverses in the NEC elections at the weekend, and Monday might witness an exodus to the Greens under the wacky policies can travel banner. Don't tell Patrick.
And good luck to them, because what it will prove beyond doubt is independence is not their priority.
I can't see Ian Lawson putting that at the end of today's article unless it's true.
Well, but if they do all quit the SNP and move to the Greens, it's going to be their pet projects that take them away, not independence. So I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, there's some of them that shouldn't be anywhere near
It looks
a
like,
mainstream political party anyway.
I think you're right about Joanna Cherry, Jimmy, because I mean she even answers the SNP HQ's mantras about why they have no plan B.
Yeah, I mean there was not a single word of criticism of Nicola in that article, but the whole article basically reeked off. Now's your chance. Step up, piss, or get off the pot. That's basically what the whole article was saying. Miss Sturgeon, piss or get off the pot.
I mean, things like the last Indie Ref was secured as a result of pressure that was irresistible, not just because of the mandate the SNP won, but also because of the robust leadership and statecraft of the Salmond government.
Yeah, and she's got a point there. What I saw, the first thing that flashed across my head was nobody that wants to lead the party can be Brutus. So she's going to have to support Nicola to the bitter end. But I think she's managing her possible candidacy for SNP leadership very well.
I'm not certain that she wants to be leader, but we need somebody to lead the challenge, shall we say. Sometimes it's the person that leads the challenge doesn't become the new leader. Who would be the new leader?
Well, that's why she's not challenging Nicola, in my opinion. I mean, I think if she does have ambitions to lead the SNP, she's playing it very well, in my opinion.
I think she's, I'm not sure she does have the ambitions to lead, but what I'm certain that she has is the ambition to make sure that it's somebody who genuinely wants independence that leads the party. Whether that's Nicola, and whether Nicola's willing to step up and actually use one of these mandates that she cries out for, or whether Nicola steps aside. Who knows? She might be too damaged by the Salmond affair. We don't know yet. That's yet to play out. But I think it's pretty certain that, well, I, for one, absolutely 100% do not want Angus Robertson anywhere near any senior office in that party, never mind being Nicola's chosen successor, for reasons that you guys know that I'm not going to go into here. Well,
I'm with you. But I've noticed that it was George Jack that answered the query from Brendan O'Neill about a plan B by saying, well, by being the mouthpiece for Boris. And I think I'm going to predict that Boris does not answer the next question on IndieRef 2. I don't think Boris is going to be the one that says the time is not now. No, you can't have it. I think he's going to push this down to
which is fine,
Westminster's man in Scotland.
Aye, that's fine, mate. But the Scottish Secretary and the leader of the Scottish Conservatives are both pygmies, and we won't be told no by a pygmy. It's going to have, but it will have to eventually bounce up to Boris saying it's not happening.
Well, and if he refuses to answer the question by passing it down the line, it solves his problem of being to blame for it. Well, it doesn't solve his problem.
Look,
For
you
it. It is his fault, but it allows the press to say it's not his fault.
Yeah, but
I think, Boris,
you're both raising another question that needs to be answered first. How long do you think the men in grey suits are going to allow Boris to stay there? I would guess somewhere about Easter, about the time of the May election.
nah, he has to be there till after the election. He
Does
has
he?
to be there till after the
Boris?
Scottish election.
Well,
Aye.
they
Oh,
reckon
yeah.
he's such a loser for that election. They might want to ship him in.
No.
By that time,
And-
enough of Brexit has happened for him to take the blame.
And Dave, what? No, absolutely not, mate. Rishi Sunak wants a job, and Rishi Sunak is their choice for the job. But he has to allow Boris and Michael Gove to take the blame for Brexit because they were the head of vote leave. Sunak has to have none of the mud for Brexit stick to him.
So Easter's too soon.
Yeah, I would imagine it'd be.
Yeah.
When Parliament's in recess next summer, August, September time, that's when they'll make their move, get rid of Boris, put Rishi Sunak in position for the conference season, and then all of a sudden you've got yet another reset.
I think you're being too Jockinese about it as well. I don't think Scotland matters a shit to the 22 committee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're probably right.
I don't think it matters to them. I think they've got bigger fish to fry.
The 22 committee are basically looking at Brexit and going, this is going to be a shitstorm. We knew it was going to be a shitstorm. We kind of hoped that some kind of deal could be done. But if there's going to be no deal, we must blame Boris and Michael Gove.
Yeah.
Because apart from anything else, every Tory MP is ambitious. Even the guys on the 22 committee, come on, they're backbenchers. But at the end of the day, they can create a massive power vacuum by getting rid of the two big beasts at the same time. They've already got rid of Dominic Cummings.
And they've got a whole team in reserve, remember. Everybody Boris threw out of the Conservative Party who looks more competent than his whole cabinet is sitting in the wings waiting to be brought back on board. And a lot of them look like they could be in the 1922 committee. Nah, Boris is there for a while yet. So a lot more shit he's got to carry.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yes. So Boris is still going to be there for the May election.
Or it doesn't matter who's in charge of the Tories in May. It's not May that matters. If by some strange quirk of fate in July we get a referendum, then Boris's coat might be on a sugly peg.
Well, then the next question is, will Sturgeon still be there in May? Because when all of a sudden this morning, up comes on Twitter, trending across the UK was Salmond. And I thought, what's Salmond done to be trending across the UK? So I went on Twitter and found out it was all these stories about the Salmond affair have now hit the fan.
Yeah, because what they're going to do is they're going to try and do what they did to Corbyn. They're going to try and destroy Sturgeon.
It looks like it. I think that started.
Yeah,
it's going to be a character assassination, because that's the only way the Tories can. Well, it's proven that if the Tories assassinate the character of their opponent, it works. It worked with Michael Foot. It worked years ago with Neil Kinnock. It certainly worked with Jeremy Corbyn. So Nicola's going to get absolutely slammed, and every single newspaper will be carrying every little tidbit.
It won't work against Sturgeon. It won't work against Sturgeon.
Frankly, they've not got enough in them, mate. The Salmond affair
exactly
isn't enough. They need this. If there was a smoking gun out there, they'd have found it by now.
Yeah.
Well, so the thing is, of course,
it won't work there.
I don't think there's enough of rebels inside the Yes movement that would want her to go. Yes, the unionists obviously want her to go, but
nobody in their right mind that wants independence wants her to go.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
She has to lead us into the next election. She has to lead the SNP into the next election, because she's sitting at 56% or something like that. You know, she's almost got a 40-point lead over the Tories in second place for the parliamentary election coming up. And there's nobody with any weight whatsoever within the party that would consider removing her with a 40-point lead. If they stuck their head out and actually said that, their head would be shot off, and that would be the end of their career in party politics.
So and her personal standing is massive. It's even higher than that.
Frankly, if she doesn't deliver next year, I'll cheerfully go up and drag her out by her high heels for Butte House myself. If she turns round and asks for a Section 30 and accepts now is not the time again, she will not last 5 minutes.
Well, Jimmy, to be honest with you, that's a minority view in Scotland. I mean, she is literally untouchable at the moment.
I don't think so if she doesn't follow through, mate.
Well, unless they find out that she eats babies for breakfast, there's no way.
If she did, she would be taller.
So don't forget, people close to the target, and the target is Nicola. Please, people close to the target will also be targeted themselves.
Moral.
Well, they can't get her husband, mate. They've been trying for the last 2 years and they've not found anything to get him with.
So who's next?
What do you get him with? That he's
Shirley-Ann.
Shirley-Ann's a meaningless. She's a glyph, mate. She's nothing.
Yeah.
She's absolutely meaningless.
John,
even within the parliamentary party, I think people would be surprised if she opened her mouth and had anything normal to say. But she's obviously well liked at headquarters, so they just keep her in a job.
She was good when she was younger. I don't know what's happened to her. But John Swinney, can he touch John Swinney?
No. I think so.
So who do you go for?
I think Swinney's a bit finished, mate, because
he's a manager.
I know, mate, but education's a poison chalice. He's done such a good job at finance. Why did she ever take him off finance?
Well,
I think that was her way of saying, "Ken, what, John? After this parliament, you're done, son."
Can
Well,
we return to the conference
anyway,
rather than the personalities of Boris Johnson and Nicola?
You started it with your Joanna Cherry.
Well, all right, but the conference is still going to be central in most SNP members and yes people's minds this weekend. Even if you're not in the SNP, you'll be wanting to see what happens because it could be quite interesting. Although whether I'm going to spend £32 to pay and sit and watch it, I doubt it.
I think the leadership are banking on that with a lot of people, mate.
Yeah, and from everything that's been said online, there's going to be nothing exciting to watch.
But the election,
bog standard stuff.
The elections to the NEC are basically the cherry on top of the cake, shall we say? That's vital.
When are they announced? Does either of you know?
As soon as somebody gets their fingers on a phone, you'll know the result before the official result is announced. Somebody will tweet it.
Of course,
it's that important.
There have been, according to Iain Lawson, there have been some last-minute changes to the rules again. It's beginning to sound like the Labour Party the time.
What was really weird about what Iain Lawson said, I thought anyway, was that nobody knew where the rules had come from. Are you seriously trying to tell me that they produce rules for conference or for NEC elections and there isn't a body responsible for those rules?
Exactly. They seem not to have come from the conference committee or from the NEC. So we're wondering, one, exactly what they all are, because Iain Lawson said there were 11 pages. That's a lot of new rules to go through.
Wow.
Two, can they actually insist that these new rules are used if conference hasn't voted them through?
Well,
If you're moving the goalposts upon conference, surely conference has to accept that you're going to move the goalposts.
Well, I'm asking you. I've got to ask you, Jimmy, because you're more of an expert on the Labour Party. The remit back option, that's been removed apparently for speakers.
Yeah, that basically just means we're not going to make a decision. Let's kick it into the long grass and talk about it.
The Labour Party never had a remit back.
Did they not?
They did, mate. They used to remit the odd thing back.
Basically,
it's a long grass option rather than the remit back, isn't it?
Well, it's we're not happy with the way you've done this. Go back and make us happy.
Go back and change your mind.
So what are you guys predicting for this weekend? Are we going to see the SNP hierarchy remain in total control, or are we going to get any upset?
I think the NEC is going to change markedly, mate. I'm interested to know where this campaign that kicked off last night, SNPGoodguys.com.
I like the name, the SNP Goodguys.
And it's a very slick operation. I wonder where they got the money for that.
Well, they've got a complete slate of candidates they want
Well,
elected.
what's interesting, I mean, it's a bit late in the day maybe, but is how slick it is compared to the shenanigans of the woke element.
Exactly,
If
mate.
they are that slick and they're that well disciplined and organized as they appear to be, and it might only be appearances, but if they are, they'll wipe the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll forgive me, but that hashtag alone, every SNP member will have seen that by about 10 o'clock today. So everybody's seen that slate. And certainly if you're going to be attending conference over the weekend, you've seen that slate, looked into the background of these people and thought, yeah, I'm voting for him. I'm voting for him. Her. You're just going to go there. So whoever's behind it and wherever the funding has come from, congratulations, because it's a decent move.
Aye, but remember, Jimmy, some of these delegates will have been mandated by
The
parts
branches.
and the branches will be full of people whose agendas are not pure.
Well, that's the thing. Aye, exactly, mate. But the problem with the NEC is that, you know, if you've got a one-eyed Doug with 3 legs that supports the Celtic, you could set up the owner of a one-eyed Doug with 3 legs that supports the Celtic SNP group, and then be co-opted onto the NEC.
Yes,
and that ain't a branch. They didn't get mandated. They just make their own mind up. So one of the first things the NEC has to do is remove voting rights from all these daftly associations that seem to have sprung up.
Or clean it up, certainly.
Aye, clean house. And just say, by the way, unless you're an elected member of the NEC, you can sit here and you can make your case as much as you want, but you won't have voting rights.
Well, in fact, but they seem to have been fiddling even the voting rights that exist in NEC meetings this year, have they not? People were allowed to vote. They shouldn't. They didn't even have rights to vote.
And certainly,
people were not allowed to vote. They did have rights to vote.
Aye, there's been too much moving of the goalposts.
Needs cleaned up.
Aye, and the party needs to be absolutely open and honest about that and say.
And there should be no anonymous voting.
No for stuff like this, no.
Which brings us kind of quite well to the second subject on the conference you wanted to touch on, Stuart.
Yes, it's a bit of a fringe conference. I'm going to sign up for it. It's free. There's a bonus. It's another hop-in. It's using the same software that they used the other weekend there for the AUOB one, which worked quite well. It's a Scottish Currency Group conference. It's discussing the 6 most popular motions that were thrown out by the conference organizing committee.
Have you got a list of them there?
Yes, the list of the motions. Right, where are we? Let's go back here. Currency, a Scottish Reserve Bank, and that topic, which was way ahead of all the other topics.
Commonweal.
Then they've got protecting wildlife diversity and licensing of grouse moors, Kirriemuir and Dean Branch.
Green Party.
Scotland's choice on Scotland's future, Brendan McNeill and Chris McAlpine, so that's Plan B.
SNP.
Transparency and compliance in the running of the NEC, that's what's his face that you don't like, David Henry.
SNP.
Complaints and handling policy, Trossachs and Teeth Branch.
Complaints. Oh, right. Yeah.
It's another housekeeping.
SNP.
Housekeeping one. Removing nuclear weapons from Scotland.
CND.
That's it, really. And it's hosted. And now the people on the panel are Richard Murphy, Karen Van Sweden, or apparently, I don't know this woman, but apparently she's Leith. Dr. Tim Rideout, who's the main speaker. At the last conference, he proposed a motion about the Reserve Bank, the changes to the policy on that, and Dr. Craig DL, head of policy at Commonweal.
So why are all these people getting together to discuss motions that the SNP conference didn't want to discuss?
Because they believe the members.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah,
what
why
discuss that.
do
Fringe
why
meant,
do
isn't it?
non-members of the SNP choose to do this, other than
I
to stir the pot and stir the shit?
I'm not. Is it open to non-members?
Anybody
Is
can
it,
sign up.
mate? It's the Scottish Currency Group. It's Richard. It's another platform for Richard Murphy to
Well,
maybe try and make a few quid.
I actually don't have a problem with it because it is things I would like to hear discussed. But you have a valid point, Jimmy. I think it's just a way of poking the hierarchy of the SNP.
I think it's a way of stirring the shit, mate. Aye, and as I say, I
That's
think it's a way of Richard Murphy injecting himself into a position that he doesn't necessarily deserve. Same way, you'll forgive me, but the currency group and modern monetary theorists, they've made an awful lot of noise this year. Again, they'll never be tested on, they'll never have to prove anything. They'll never be tested on their theories because it's a theory. You can't
What?
prove whether it's right or wrong.
Well, it's a description of something that's already going on rather than a theory.
Oh,
isn't
Stuart,
it?
you say it's going on, but it's not, because the government of the United Kingdom and all these governments that you're saying are acting within modern monetary theory, they're all saying that all the money that they're using the new is going to be paid back. So it's nothing to do with modern monetary theory at that point. They're saying they're going to pay back the debt.
Well, I know that
Until you get a government that says they're ram it, we're just going to print money. We're just going to print money as much as we want to spend it however we like. That would be modern monetary theory.
Yeah, but I mean, the Bank of Japan have been doing it for about 20 years, and they've got away with it.
It's not pure modern monetarist theory.
I'll trust you guys. You both have been in it longer than me.
Well, the problem with the government is the government treats it like it's a household budget, and people understand how household budgets work. It's not, in fact, that at all. That's not the way government money works. So they're not going to call it what it is, because that doesn't allow them then to abuse the vast majority of the population with wage freezes and tax hikes, whilst protecting their rich pals with tax giveaways.
What about Laura Kuenssberg?
You'll never get a government you'll never get a Western government that actually goes along with modern monetary theory.
Well, it admits that modern monetary theory is actually in existence.
Aye, but it dilutes the value of capital. No Western government can afford to dilute the value of capital because they get so much support from people who have massive amounts of money.
It does not have the fact that what is actually happening is they're just inventing money and then asking us to pay them interest on the money they're loaning themselves.
You
know, so
there's a cunning plan.
I mean, that does not apply to anybody that hasn't got their own currency. So modern monetary theory only applies to the United States, the UK. I suppose it does to the European Union because the euro is standalone, but it has to be a standalone currency for that to apply.
Fiat, as they call it. I mean, you've got to go back to the gold standard and realize it's not the gold standard. If you understood what the gold standard was about, then it's simpler to understand what's happening.
Well, the gold standard was like a household account, because if you didn't have the gold in the vault, you couldn't borrow against it.
Exactly. But it caused no amount of havoc by being, back in the first part of the last century.
I mean, that was huge shift.
I think the fringe event, or whatever you want to call it, I think it's common wheel, mate. It's just going to be a talking shop of trendy lefties that come out with brilliant ideas, and people clap their hands and go, woo woo, you're fantastic. But these people never have to apply their brilliant ideas. It's why Robin McAlpine's article read so beautifully today. It read fantastically. But Robin's a theorist like everybody else. He doesn't have to justify what he says. If he was completely wrong on everything he said in one article, he just writes another article, changes his position on it, and that's him fine.
Yeah. No, that's completely true. I think its major useful function, as I said earlier, will be to poke the SNP hierarchy with a sharp stick.
Look,
by saying you can't stop this being discussed,
yeah,
even if you stop it being discussed at conference.
Look,
Yeah.
if it hadn't been organised, you'd have had to invent it. It's if the top most popular motions were banned from being discussed at the conference, somebody was going to say, let's talk about it at a fringe event. Somebody would have said so anyway.
Yeah, but you then have to find the money to run your fringe event and have to go and ask permission to do it. Fringe events aren't standalone, totally independent
Permission
events.
from whom?
You need, well, if you want it on the site, you need permission from who's running the site, i.e. the SNP.
No,
Conference
it's
organisers.
well, no. It's nothing to do with the SNP. It's nothing to do with the conference organised.
Their conference, the SNP conference, has everything to do with the SNP. If you want it to be a fringe event,
If you want to be on the fringes, I mean, physically on the fringes.
I don't think
they're getting away with it this year is because it's a virtual event.
That's what I mean. It's a virtual event. Nobody can stop them doing
Yeah,
it. It's got nothing to do with the SNP.
Under normal
Stuart,
circumstances, it would be.
You got no concerns with Richard Murphy making money with SNP members?
It doesn't concern me. I think, as I said, I've just said what the situation is. If they hadn't organised it, somebody would have had to anyway, because of the behaviour of the conference organisers, banning all the popular motions. They had to be discussed.
They did, Stuart, let's be clear, they didn't ban all the popular motions. They banned every motion.
Well,
because
okay,
they were running a virtual conference
you're being
over
picky
2 days,
there,
and they've said they've not got the time.
Yeah, aye, okay. Oh, so you agree with what the conference organisers have done with the motions?
I think I'm not surprised that they've done it, given that they've never organised a virtual conference before. I'm not surprised that they just said, "Come up, we're not taking motions this year. Well, these are the points that we're going to discuss." Because let's be honest, how on earth do you organise a virtual conference for a party the size of the SNP?
Yeah, but
if there are, say, 40 motions to be discussed over 2 days.
Is this the first virtual conference that's been organised?
Yeah.
Well, could you tell me when there's been another one?
What? Haven't any other parties had a conference?
When?
Yeah.
Who's had a virtual conference?
I honestly don't know. I'm asking.
The Tories had one. The Tories had one last week, but it was basically the parliamentary party talking to each other. They didn't have many members doing any. The members got to dial in and watch it. That was their involvement.
So no, this is I'm gobsmacked. I didn't realise that the SNP were breaking new ground by the first political party in the world to hold a virtual.
They're not the first political party. I mean, Jimmy, valid point, but I think they missed a trick. I think they should have had at least one or two contentious motions.
I think it was the arrogance, mate. I think it was the arrogance of the NEC that thought, "Ken, what we are not having."
Yeah.
Chris McAlpine and Angus Brendan McNeil telling us what's going to be on the agenda. So they just banned everything, thinking that they would get away with it and that people would just wear that.
Is it actually the NEC that decides what motions go forward?
Nah, it was the conference
separate conference committee.
Like that. But we're not really clear as to who's actually on that committee. And
we know that Alan Smith's on it and Pete Wishart. As far as we know, they're both on it.
Are they?
Certainly Alan Smith.
Is Alan Smith not NEC? Or is he standing for the NEC?
He mentioned that he was on it.
He wears a few hats, mate.
Yeah.
Seen it's Hat Friday. Alan Smith likes to wear quite a few hats. Had a couple of bonnets, I know, if I'm reliably informed.
Well, as I say, I fully expect the new NEC to be announced very quickly. There'll be a lot of people watching it closely.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how many of the good guys manage to get themselves elected.
Yes, the SNP Goodguys. Somebody should bring out a song.
What else will be interesting is to see how much damage any woke that are thrown off the NEC do to the party. The SNP, which used to be very disciplined and very tight when this sort of thing happened, may find that their new intake are a lot less willing to take a kicking.
They might just be a lot less malleable as well. I take it the title for today is going to be The Good, the Bad and the Wokey.
I think it might just be SNP Goodguys. I actually thought it was going to be...
No, The Good, the Bad and the Wokey. No. That's got to be it.
It'll be interesting to see...
The Good, the Bad and the Wokey. I like that.
if the NEC does change in the way that a lot of people hope, it'll be interesting to see just how much a backward step that makes certain people take. You know,
Who draws
if
their horns in?
aye, exactly. Who winds their neck in a wee bit and thinks, you know what, I better just call Carney here.
It will be interesting to see. In other words, what will Mr. Wishart and Mr. Smith do?
I didn't think Pete's got the nous to actually realise when a shot's fired across his bows that it is a shot across his bows, and they maybe needs to take note of it.
I read that long article you both recommended. I read by Suzanne Moore, and it was revealing, indeed. I mean, I couldn't believe what happened to her. 338 Guardian journalists signed a letter telling that she must get sacked. That, I mean, talk about victimization and bullying.
Talk about cancel culture. Eh? They write about cancel culture almost daily in the Guardian, and they're perfectly willing to exercise it themselves.
Well, I'm still very leery about the whole gender thing.
Well, but this is bigger than that, though, doesn't it?
Well, it is, yeah. But I mean, that's what it springs out of.
Yeah, that's the wedge that's been used. That's the.
Yes, I mean, but almost by definition, we are old and white and ugly, and therefore we're not entitled to comment on it. But we're also.
Speak for yourself.
But by definition, by not understanding what the young people's attitude is to this gender issue, that defines us as old.
Oh, I think I understand what their attitude is. I think maybe because they didn't witness our women folk fighting for their rights not that very long ago. It's of less importance to them.
No, my mother brought, of another generation. She was a school teacher by the time she was 18. That was 1926. Her first school was Fergusley Park in Paisley. Half the time the teachers would buy boots for some of the kids that didn't have boots. And the next day the boots would have been pawned. I mean, she saw a world like that, and yet she brought up her two sons, both me and my brother, as feminists. We had no choice. We weren't given a choice. It's a bit like Robin McAlpine. He had no choice but to be an independista because of his mother. Me and my brother were given no choice about being feminists. And I went on to study feminism when it was good old-fashioned feminism, and still in the 80s. Now it's a different world.
You do realise, Stuart, that some of the woke brigade would have listened to that in absolute horror and would tell you to your face that you don't understand women, you don't understand what a feminist is, just because you're a man. It's ridiculous. It's how some of these radical feminists are. Some of them are. I wouldn't even go as far as to call them a pain in the arse. I would go as to call them something that needs to be stomped upon. Some of the stuff that the wokists come out with is quite frightening.
I always found it amazing that when you'd have discussions with the parents of your middle class friends about women working, and because I mean the discussion was still live when I was young about whether women should work or should be at home with the family. And I'm sitting there from a working class background thinking, who in my family that's a female didn't work?
Right.
They all worked, whether it was doing other people's cleaning, ironing, or in one or two cases built a career for themselves. But there was no women in my family didn't work.
It was a bit of an eye-opener for me when I went to secondary school, because I went to Trinity Secondary School, and obviously there was quite a few considerably more affluent than I'd met before people at that school, and it was quite an eye-opener to me when people tell me that their mothers didn't work. Because I didn't, when I was at primary school, mate, growing up in Leith, everybody's ma worked, if they could.
Aye, and if they weren't working, they were looking for work. And they did all the washing and cleaning and everything.
Aye.
The good old days, mate.
I've got to be
That's why I should have voted for Brexit, to take us back to those days.
By the way, I just seen there that Ursula von der Leyen has instructed the civil service of the European Union to go all out now in preparations for a no-deal Brexit, because they think that nothing's going to happen in the next few days.
Oh, well, that's good news. We'll be able to fish anywhere we want. Unfortunately, we'll not be able to sell it anywhere.
We'll all have to start eating fish.
Mate.
Now we've all got to take up eating fish then.
And that'll be it. If you want your brew money, you're gonna have to spend £10 on prawns.
Oyster.
By the way, Nori, you're no far off the mark there. These new schemes that Rishi announced the other day, they're awfully much like YTS dressed up as something else. They're going to help people who've been out of work for a year. When has the Tory party ever helped people that are out of work? What they do is tell you to take any shitey job or scheme that they come up with, or you will not get any money.
The more
They're
people
not interested in helping.
The more people, and people should try and remember this, the more people unemployed, the lower the wages, the more profit goes into Tory supporting pockets.
Well, they've got a scheme that, and it doesn't matter what changes, they make money.
Aye, exactly. They'll come up with a fancy new name for it, and it'll have beautiful marketing materials and what have you. But basically, it's the YTS, and they're going to hammer the young again. What was it when I was a kid? 23 quid for the first year and 27 quid a week for the second year. 27 quid a week in the mid to late 80s. How the fuck you might manage on that?
No, you could have joined the army. Oh, you did.
He's been in the army and the Labour Party, for crying out loud.
Which
the
brings
army,
me
the Labour Party, the post office, mate.
The credibility of this man. The credibility of this man knows no bounds.
One fucked up cocktail. That's what that is, mate.
And by the way, before we end, I've got to bring up this product placement. Apparently, see, Jimmy's been guilty of product placement. He was advising us to buy Aldi spiced rum.
Oh.
So that I know somebody that went out and bought Aldi spiced rum, and in fact, I might even be getting a bottle myself.
John, it's a dash
so
fine
it
bottle.
worked.
I'll tell you what as well. If you didn't want to go to Aldi's and buy it, you can get one for about 12.5 quid in Lidl stay, and that's a good bottle well.
Probably
It's
the same.
alcoholic spiced rum. It's the price that counts.
And I must say, other rums are available, and I have not been approached by the German Chamber of Commerce to advertise said rums.
Well, we need to talk about getting paid for this product placement in future.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, you go chasing it.
You chase it, mate. I'll have a couple of drams out the bottle if you get in.
I've spent enough time chasing bloody advertising money.
I think we've run out of time here, Nori.
I think so. Will we call it a day at that, Stuart?
I think we better call it a day.
Well, you do the thank yous.
Well,
thank you, everybody. By the way, I think we're going to come up. I think I've decided I'm going to come up with a list of all our contributors, the people that comment on the various forums that we appear on. Obviously, can't in the live radio, but thanks for everybody that listens and comments. We do really appreciate everything you say.
Crawler.
Sook.
Crawler. They're entitled. They're entitled to know they're appreciated, even if they do slag us off sometimes.
I had a nice comment the other day, but I had to check out whether it was a compliment or not.
Whether it was being cynical.
Aye. Okay, we'll call it a day at that. Thanks for listening, folks.
Yeah. Cheerio.
Cheers for now.